Let me quickly walk you through this process so you can practice it in real time. So, first step in the navigating trigger process. Okay, so I want to start this video with a little bit of a fair warning. In this episode, I'm going to be walking you through a process to help you work through and heal your triggers. However, because we're dealing with triggers, and what you will learn is that when you're in a trigger, you're dealing with the emotional child part of your brain. It can be really hard. In other words, facing your own demons, facing your own shadows, facing the parts of you that are continuously causing these things that you necessarily don't like to show up in your life can be really, really difficult to look at. It's a challenge to look at our own stuff. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it. We wouldn't have everybody in the world blaming everyone else for their problems. So this, I always say, is the real deep inner work. It is, to me, the real deep spiritual work that we should all be doing, so that not only can we become more free within ourselves, but we free others. We take our power back and we give others their power back when we're willing to look at somebody that's triggering us and say, I wonder what this is inside of me, and approach that with compassion, love, and curiosity. So before I dive into this week's episode, and before I dive into the process, and before I dive into the teaching, I would ask that you approach listening to this with those three same things: with compassion, with love, and with curiosity, just to sort of understand maybe these situations that keep showing up in my life, maybe they don't have anything to do with anybody else. Maybe actually they have something to do with me. And if you can start there, if you can start from that point and you can be curious, oh my gosh, a whole world opens up to you. It's not going to be an easy world, but on the other side of that is so much freedom. You lose the victim mentality, you gain your power back. It's a totally different experience for you in your life. So if you can do that, then continue on watching this. If you can't, maybe take it in little bits and pieces. So let's dive in. Okay, so you may be on the self-help path, the self-help journey, spiritual journey, personal growth, personal development, inner growth, whatever name that you want to give it. And maybe you've been doing some internal work on yourself for a while. You understand that healing has to occur in order for you to be more free and experience more joy and be a happier, healthier, healed, and more whole human being. But maybe you find yourself getting really frustrated with your daily triggers. So it's like maybe you have a meditation practice and you're doing your meditation in the morning and you feel really great. And then you get out and you move through your day and you find yourself being triggered at every single moment and you don't understand what happened. You're trying to put up positive affirmations all over the place and listen to really positive things. And yet you still find those familiar emotions and familiar thoughts ruling your day when you're just trying to be happier. After all, isn't that what all this work is about? Is just becoming a happier person overall. And so this is why I say shadow work is one of the most important things you can do on a healing journey, because if you're just doing positive affirmations and you're just doing meditations to try to feel better all the time, it's never going to work. Why? Because you have some really root core belief systems that are operating subconsciously in the background that if you're not aware of, that is exactly what is ruling your life. And that is exactly why those triggers keep showing up. And the problem is that most of us as human beings, especially if we're on the path of self-help and we want to heal and we want to feel better, we want to avoid triggers. It's completely normal. The problem with that is that if we're always trying to avoid triggers or have people act in a certain way so that we aren't triggered, we're never, ever going to be free, because we can't control other people. And so if we understand that triggers are actually our portal to freedom, that there's actually gold deep within those triggers, we're not going to run away from them. In fact, we may just have the courage to move towards them. And so that's really the first step in this process, is understanding, all right, I'm on this self-help journey. I'm trying to be a more positive person. I'm doing my meditation, or I'm doing whatever inner work practice it is for you, yet I'm still finding myself triggered throughout the day. Another way that you can look at this is, for a lot of people, it's a common theme in their life. So if you're someone that's like, there's no good men out there, I hear that one often, or money's really hard to come by, or bad stuff, bad shit always happens to me no matter how good I'm doing. Those are actually just beliefs. And when that happens and that trigger happens, that is because we have subconscious core root beliefs in what we call quadrant 2 of your brain that is going to drive your entire experience. And so once you can say, I want to move towards these triggers instead of away from them, I promise you that is your pathway to freedom. Now, positive affirmations, changing your thoughts to think better thoughts, that too is all part of this process. It's part of the process that we teach in our online course, because you do have to do those things. But you can't do only those things. That's only half of the equation. And you will know that if you tried to do those things, and yet you're still finding these common themes happen in your life. You'll know that, okay, somewhere along the lines, I'm not getting to the root. I'm not getting to the core of this. And this is exactly the process that I'm going to walk you through today. The first thing that we have to understand is, number one, the quadrant theory. And if you don't know what the quadrant theory is, you can go to our mini series and we go through every single quadrant. We explain exactly what it is. And so I don't have to go into all of that with you. However, you can just think of your brain as 4 different quadrants. You got quadrant 1, 2, 3, 4. And these different aspects of your brain represent different sides of you. They're responsible for different things. You release different chemicals in your body when you're activating different aspects of the brain and different aspects of the quadrant. And so when we're talking about healing, and we're talking about shadow work, and we're talking about moving through these things, we're going to be doing work in quadrant 2 mostly. This is where the shadow work exists. This is where healing exists. You can't access your healing in quadrant 1 or quadrant 3. Those parts of the brain are not responsible for where the limbic system is, and specifically your emotional limbic system. That is in quadrant 2. That is where memories are stored. This is also where meaning is stored. In other words, your subconscious beliefs. So how you give meaning to the world. They all exist in quadrant 2, and that's why you have to access that quadrant in order to do the healing work. But we're also going to be accessing quadrant 4, because can you imagine being raised with like the most wise, unconditionally loving, compassionate parent? That lives inside of you in your quadrant 4. So we're going to be activating the quadrant 4 in our brain, but not until we really do the work in quadrant 2. So the first thing that I want you to understand before we dive into the actual process for how to navigate a trigger is that the first 7 years of your life, your brain is like a sponge. You are literally in a state of hypnosis. And so as your brain is forming, you start forming subconscious beliefs about yourself and the world based on your caregivers. So if your parent said to you, money's really hard to come by, which would be lack, that is literally easily imprinted in your brain because it's neuroplastic the first 7 years. So everything that comes in, like I said, you're like a sponge, you're like in hypnosis for the first 7 years. So that's really where your identity, who you think you are, is formed. So that's the first step to understanding navigating triggers. Your triggers were formed those first 7 years of your life. So this is why, but they become subconscious. So as an adult, a lot of times you're not even aware that you hold these belief systems, but how you can be aware that you hold them is, again, what are the similar situations that keep showing up in your life? Did they show you that money is hard to come by? Did they show you there's not very many good men? Did they show you that you can never get ahead? Is that what your environment keeps showing back to you? If that's the case, that is because you have a core subconscious belief that those things are true. And those were imprinted in the first 7 years. Okay, so that's the first step to really understand that. And so what we want to do is recognize what these core beliefs are. And the way that we do that in the process of what we teach is a concept called the boardroom. This was created by Scott because he's a great analogist, but it's basically his way of explaining how this process works, how this trigger process works. So what is the boardroom? So as I said, the boardroom is a concept that Scott came up with as a very good analogist to help people understand how that quadrant 2 part of their brain works and how they keep creating the thing that they actually don't want to experience in their life, which again is really, really challenging sometimes when you're triggered to go, that has nothing to do with the other person. It only has everything to do with me. So I want you to think of your brain, or specifically the limbic system in your brain, as a big boardroom. And at the head of the table is like the observer side of you. Okay, so that is the part that's animating reality. And reality, as you see it, exists over here. Okay, now you have members of your boardroom that sit at this table. You can call these members of your boardroom your subconscious beliefs, those core beliefs that you hold about the world. And because we have a thing called the reticular activating system in our brain, which means it is the filter to only take into our reality what it thinks is important, guess what? Based upon our subconscious beliefs. So let me give you a quick example. If a friend to her core believes that her other friend is a really angry person because, guess what? One of her boardroom members is anger, her brain will literally filter out all the times that her friend isn't angry and will only focus on the times her friend is angry. Now, someone else may come along, meet her friend, and be like, I don't think she's an angry person at all. Is she an angry person? Well, it depends upon your perception. And this is how your perception creates your reality. Because everything that you're seeing, all the millions bits of information that's going on right now, your brain couldn't take it all in. So that RAS filters out everything that's not important, and it literally only focuses on what it thinks is important. And as I said, that is based on your subconscious beliefs. So this person may not be an angry person, but because that's imprinted, because it's a boardroom member, that is what you are going to experience. This is why two people can experience the same exact situation, and one person may get totally triggered and upset and hurt, and another person wouldn't at all. It wouldn't be a trigger for them at all. You can recognize this in your family and friends. Your friend may have common themes in her life that you don't at all. You just don't understand that. That's because she has a different boardroom member in her brain, in quadrant 2 of her brain, than you do. So her reality is going to pick up those things. She's going to experience perceptions in her reality that are based on her boardroom and beliefs, and you're going to experience something totally different. The first step in this process is awareness. Okay, so first step, number 1, awareness. So the awareness process starts with, what are my boardroom members? Who are the people that sit at my table? Meaning these boardroom members are pretty important, because my entire reality that I experience, I am going to see through the lens of these board members. So it's like this. Let's say one of my boardroom members is something's wrong with me. So now, when I am triggered, I am going to see my reality down here through the lens of something's wrong with me. So let me give you an example. If I'm working with someone, coaching someone, mentoring someone, because they have their own boardroom, I maybe do something that upsets and triggers that person because they're seeing reality through their lenses, and then that person gets upset with me. Guess what happens if I haven't moved through this trigger yet? If I haven't had the awareness and gone through the process that I'm going to take you through, that I'm seeing reality through that lens, that something's wrong with me, then guess what? I'm going to want to blame her. She's going to want to blame me. Then we get defensive, and then we fight, and both parties are playing out their own boardroom. And there's no reconciliation because neither one can understand that what they're perceiving the situation through is through their own boardroom. In that moment, when that situation occurs, and you can replace it with whatever's happening in your life, if you can first have the awareness that, okay, this is my trigger, right? I think that this is a boardroom member. How do I know that? Because I'm feeling an emotion and I'm telling myself a story, right? And because of that story, then I will get defensive, because as a child, you're looking for love and safety. That is what a child requires those first 7 years in order to develop properly. But a lot of times we don't get that sense of complete unconditional love and complete safety because our parents are unconscious. It's not their fault. But when that trigger is happening, we are dealing with an emotional child. We're dealing with quadrant 2 of our brain, literally. So we cannot see reality as it is in that moment because we're emotional. And so when something like that happens, when you're triggered, you have to recognize your boardroom members. So there's going to be lots of different boardroom members. This one may be, I'm bad. Let's say I'm irresponsible. These are all going to be beliefs about yourself. Lazy, selfish. Okay, so these are all boardroom members. These are all the shadows. And why I say the shadows is because selfish sits at my boardroom table. Lazy sits at my boardroom table. There are times in my life where if I wasn't balanced and I went into the shadow, I could be incredibly lazy, meaning I could sit around for days and do nothing if I'm in the shadow of that. On the other extreme, I will push myself like a freaking maniac because I'm afraid I'm lazy. And if I'm lazy, it means I don't get love and I don't get safety, because that's what the inner child part of me needed and wanted when I was little and never got. So I'm always going to be looking outside of me for that love and safety instead of learning how to provide that within myself. And so, as I said, you'll know what these boardroom members are by what are the similar situations that happen in your life and what are the thoughts and feelings when that situation is triggered. In other words, if you keep going through relationships and every time, let's say you get broken up with somebody, what are the thoughts that you think and what are the emotions that you experience? And if it's a common theme, that's how you know as well. If this situation is always happening to you, you have to take that situation and dissect, well, what is the belief underneath that? What am I believing about myself or about the world or about people? That maybe I'm not good enough and I'll never find anyone to love. Well, let's sort of retrace that back to your childhood. Where were there experiences in your childhood? And this isn't to blame anybody. This is just to uncover the root problem. What was the belief? Where was the belief form? And what was that belief? And what was the feeling? Where was I looking for safety and love as a child and didn't get it because of this? Because I believed I was bad. So I didn't get love and safety because I believed I was bad as a child. So that's the first step, is filling out that boardroom, understanding who is at your boardroom table based on those first 7 years and based on the things that keep showing up in your life. And then navigating through the triggers. So let's say something happens. Number one, when you're in a trigger, first step, awareness. You can't change something unless you're first aware. This is why they call them blind spots and shadow work, because people don't want to turn the table around and go, shoot, maybe I'm the common denominator in this situation. Maybe it isn't my child. Maybe it isn't my husband. Maybe it isn't my sister. Maybe it isn't my mom. Whoever it may be. Let me give you a quick example. When I started down my own healing journey, my spiritual awakening, I got to a point of doing a lot of inner work every single day and recognizing these common themes in my life and what those beliefs I held about myself that started those first 7 years. Before that, I would have blamed my husband at the time for being unhappy, just everything in my life that I didn't like, I would have blamed him. And when I started doing the inner work, I got to a point where I recognized within my boardroom that I no longer could blame him for my life if I was willing to stay in the marriage. I realized that it had nothing to do with him changing in order for me to be happy, that I had to learn how to be happy in the midst of whatever he was doing or whatever was going on in our marriage before anything would change. And eventually that led me to leave the marriage, but I left the marriage from love. I didn't leave because I was running from him. I left because I did a lot of work on my boardroom member and I realized it was not a loving situation for me or for him. And so I always say I left from love. And that's what will happen when you work on these triggers. People in your life will either fall away or they'll rise to your level. It's just what happens. And so the more that you do that inner work, you're going to have discernment, you're going to have clarity. And that, if we're up in the quadrants again, if down here, quadrant 2 is your wounded child that you're learning to deal with, quadrant 4 exists wisdom and discernment and unconditional love. Wisdom, discernment, and unconditional love live up here. But if you're constantly trying to run from your triggers down here, you're not going to run too far. They're going to keep showing up because they're your portal to freedom. What we have to do is learn to activate this quadrant 4 so that we can reparent that inner child that's getting triggered in the moment, and we can transcend these triggers. So if I can transcend something's wrong with me, guess what happens? Those situations don't turn up anymore in my life because I'm not seeing through that lens. I have now replaced something's wrong with me with unique, quirky. I like to say freak flag now because I'm very proud to wave my freak flag. Those are now things that I can say about myself. I could put a new boardroom member in there and be really proud of and really, really love. So let me quickly walk you through this process so you can practice it in real time. So first step in the navigating trigger process, awareness. Second step, accountability. You have to be aware this trigger is happening inside me. It has nothing to do with the situation or the person. That's first step, awareness. Second step, accountability. I am responsible for dealing with my own triggers. I cannot keep blaming other people for these same situations that are showing up in my life. This is for me to heal, not the other person to heal. It is my boardroom to work through, not theirs. That is the hardest part in a navigating trigger process, because you're not going to want to do the accountability step until you've sort of released the emotion that's happening. So awareness, okay, this is happening inside of me. I need to excuse myself and not engage with this person or this situation. I need to excuse myself and I need to walk away. I need to be aware that, okay, this is happening in me. Okay, I am responsible to heal this. That's the next step. After you can take that accountability and understand that it's up to me to heal it, then you're going to move into, this is not my saying, this is from a saying by a guy of the name of Aaron Dottie, heal it to heal it. And all that means is you have to allow whatever emotion is arising to pass through the system. The most important thing to remember is you cannot attach a story to it. So once you've excused yourself, you have awareness, this is me, I take accountability for this. I'm now going to set the alarm on my phone for 5 minutes. I'm going to go in my room, go wherever I need to go for 5 minutes, and I'm just going to allow the emotion to move through my body. Now, they say that actually the chemical reaction of whatever emotion you're experiencing only lasts in your system for 90 seconds. The chemicals only last for 90 seconds. Anything after that is because you're telling a story. The more you tell the story about, but they did this, but this happens to me all the time, but, then that emotion's going to keep going. But if you can sever the attachment to the story and just sit and let your body move through whatever emotions are moving through it without a story, they pass. And this is a problem. We've never learned to actually allow emotions to flow through us. Guess what? Emotions pass. It's what they do. It's just we impede them by telling a story and by shoving them down and not feeling them. Feeling it is really uncomfortable. It's going to be really uncomfortable. May take longer than 5 minutes, may take shorter. But the point is you're giving yourself at least 5 minutes to just notice the sensations moving through your body with no story. And if you can do that, they will pass through it. And once the emotions have passed, guess what happens? You're now not stuck in the emotional child. You now can move to the rational adult. Once you have healed it to heal it, you are then going to reparent yourself. In other words, what would you have needed to hear in a situation that something happened when you were a child? What would you have needed to hear by your parent in that moment, right? So maybe you were crying, you came home because you got bullied at school and your parent said, toughen up, whatever. So when you're getting triggered now, it's that same exact scenario happening within your body. You are the triggered emotional child. What would you needed to hear in that moment? And that's how you're going to create your new boardroom. Maybe for me, it's okay. You're unique. You're quirky. That's what makes you so awesome. I'm literally saying this to myself. I'm creating a sense of safety in my body for that inner child that's wounded inside of me. And I can use wisdom, discernment, and unconditional love activated by my Quadrant 4 to also hold that inner child literally within my body. So the love and safety I'm seeking out there, I learn to provide myself when I'm reparenting. And that's how if you do this consistently, this is why I say triggers are your portal to freedom. The more you get triggered, the more you do this process, guess what? The more opportunity you have to re-imprint your brain with the new boardroom member. This may be hard working. Lazy may be hard working. I'm bad may be adventurous. Because if I have a parent that doesn't nurture or like adventurous, he's going to say I'm bad, right? But if I can tell myself, you're just really adventurous, that's amazing, I can re-imprint and reprogram empowering beliefs. And then guess what happens eventually? Once you re-imprint this new boardroom, that is the reality, that is the perspective that you are going to experience. Your whole life is a reflection of what you think about yourself. So if you re-imprint these constantly, because it takes time to re-imprint new beliefs, it took 7 years in your childhood and your brain was mush. Your brain isn't mush anymore, so it's going to take some time. On a side note, it's why we use ketamine therapy in our courses and at our retreats, because ketamine therapy increases neuroplasticity. It allows you to re-imprint these new beliefs quicker and faster. So reparent, last step, transcendence. Once you can do this process over and over and over again, and you can make yourself a new boardroom, guess what happens? Transcendence. You don't have to try to hate those parts of yourself away. Like I tried to hate the lazy part of myself away. It will never, ever, ever work, because then I'm just doing to that inner child in me the same thing that my caretakers did to me. It will never work. You have to come from a place of compassion, love, and safety, and unconditional love. And you have to give that to your own inner child in this process. So the first step, awareness. This is in me. Second step, accountability. This is mine to heal. Third step, allow my body to feel whatever emotion's coming up, and then I reparent. And then you can recognize, if you filled out your boardroom, you can recognize when you're triggered, oh, hey, yeah, that's just a member of my boardroom. That's the perception I've been seeing through a long time. That's how I know, okay, I should go through this process right now. And then you have your new boardroom of the boardroom members that you want to have there, that you want to experience in your life. So hopefully this process was helpful for you. If you have any questions in the comments, let me know. Here's the other thing. This is a very quickened version of how to work through a trigger. It seems simple, and it is, but as I said, it can be really, really, really challenging. So if you guys want to dive into this process deeper, we just released a self-paced 4-module online course that literally takes you through this entire process, but through 4 modules. So you can get a much deeper understanding, and you get worksheets to fill out and everything else. We just released it, and we're offering 50% off of this course just for this week. So in the description, I will put the coupon code, and I'll put the website so you can go check that out. If, like I said, you're somebody that's like, I'm getting triggered all day and I don't understand why. This is the fundamental process to healing your triggers. And if you try to bypass this, it might work for a little bit, but you're always going to find yourself coming back to these old boardroom members. So if you want to dive deep and you're ready to really gain your emotional freedom back, have better relationships, feel better about yourself, and become a happier, healthier, healed, and more whole human being, I'm telling you, this course is probably some of our best work yet, to be honest with you. It will be incredibly helpful to you. So like I said, I'll put the link to it in the description, and I'll put the 50% off coupon code, and that's only good until this Friday. So go check it out. Let me know in the comments, was this helpful for you? If you're feeling vulnerable enough, let me know what some of your boardroom members, your old ones, are, and maybe what are some of your new boardroom members. I love to hear from you guys. I love to know that this is helpful and valuable to you. Let me know. Share with somebody if you feel that this would be helpful for them, and I will see you next time.